Well, it was last January when all of the sporting world was absolutely shocked by the death of Washington State University quarterback Tyler Hilinski. And shortly after hearing about the death, within hours, we found out that it was a suicide. And he has parents who are trying to get some answers. I had a chance a couple of months ago to talk with Tyler's mom, Kym Hilinski. And Kym is back on the show with us this afternoon, along with her husband, Mark Hilinski. And Kym, Mark, I appreciate both of you coming on with me today.
Thanks, Dori.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark,
we're actually here in New York.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, because you guys went on the Today Show this morning, right?
Exactly, that's right.
So, Mark, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, but I'm the parent of three daughters in their 20s. My youngest was a Coug, and I can only begin to imagine what you and your family have been going through these last several months. But with this CTE diagnosis, tell me when you got that information about Tyler's brain.
Sure. Dori, I'd first like to say, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to talk to you guys, the most important thing for us to tell you right now is that we are greatly in debt to the Coug family, the alum, and really the whole Pacific Northwest has been incredibly supportive, and we're very grateful. We couldn't have gotten through the stuff we went through today and continue to go through and get through the past 5 months without their support.
Well, I'm sure everyone appreciates hearing that, because I've heard so much love expressed about Tyler and for your family, and I know that your family remains in an awful lot of people's prayers around here too.
Well, we're very grateful for that. I can tell you, very quickly when we went to the medical examiner's office, and they were more kind than the sterile sort of thought process I had on how maybe those guys would react. And we met with the medical examiner and the detective at the time, and the request was made at that point, or nearly that point. I don't remember exactly anymore. But they asked us if we'd be interested in working with the Mayo Clinic and have Tyler's brain, examined by them for potential CTE at that time. Some 6 to 8 weeks later, we received a phone call. I think Kym received the phone call first, and we were advised of the results, and we got a follow-up report from them indicating that he had CTE stage 1.
And what does that mean? Because I'm sure you guys know a lot more about CTE than even those of us. I cover the Seahawks, but I'm sure you've gotten a crash course. So what does phase 1 mean? For neither Kym nor I are medical experts for sure. And we've had the very difficult task of trying to learn from a lay perspective without a medical background on that stuff. So this is a father talking, sure.
First of all, but there's, my understanding is that there's 3 stages. As an example, Hernandez from the Patriots had his brain tested. He was CTE stage 3. I'm unfamiliar with, or less familiar with some of the others that have been publicly talked about. But CTE, if there's such a thing as mild, he had a mild form, or the first stage,
Okay.
That's what CTE stage 1 indicates.
And Kym,
now they also.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say that they also said that his brain resembled more of a 60-year-old or 60-plus-year-old from the medical examiner's office than what she would expect or she has seen in normal 21-year-old athletes.
Okay, got it. Kym, when you and I last talked, the big question, of course, was why. And you had told me what a happy boy Tyler was, and we talked about those iconic photos of him with the big smile being carried off on his teammate's shoulder. I don't even know how to phrase this question, but if CTE played some factor Does that give you any measure of comfort of knowing that there may have been an answer to that why?
And that's sort of, it's double-edged a little bit because, we kept searching for the why, and eventually we didn't think we'd ever find out 100%. And then we did get the report in the mail, and the first thing I thought of is that we allowed our son to play football. We allowed his brothers to play football. I mean, there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of parents who allow their children to play football. And Tyler, developed CTE, and did that play a part in what he did on January 16th? I think it did, but I'm not an expert. So maybe it filled in some of the questions that we had, but I don't think it's entirely what happened to Tyler on January 16th. But it did help us realize that there's something that just wasn't right with Tyler, and now we have something concrete and to focus on as far as the why.
Besides the physical nature of CTE, have you, since we last talked, have you gotten any other answers, not physically related, emotionally related, as to the why?
We think, we look back and we hear some thoughts and some remarks from people in November, late November, early November, somewhere around there, going into December. And we remember Kelly, I guess, had heard from Tyler, I'm sad. And he sort of turned him around on that. And Tyler had shared that same thought with the girlfriend that he had at Washington State. And he also got a pretty big hit, and you probably saw it in the Sports Illustrated video that was online today in the Arizona game. So it seems like all of that sort of came together at the same time, and I don't know if that's a coincidence. I mean, it's just 5 months since he passed. We're still trying to put the pieces together, but at the same time, we're trying to really move forward so that we can help these student athletes.
Yeah, and I know that's why I and so many of my listeners, maybe who have kids who play football, why they appreciate hearing from you on this subject. And, of course, the big question, I'm going to take a quick time out here, Kym and Mark, but the big question, if you could go back and do it all over again, would you let Tyler play football? So I'll dive into that. We're talking with Kym and Mark Hilinski, their son Tyler, the Cougar quarterback who took his life in January, but his memory lives on. And our conversation with his parents will continue in just a moment. We are talking with Kym and Mark Hilinski. Their son Tyler was a shining star who played quarterback for the Washington State Cougars, but he took his life in January. And Mom and Dad and the whole Coug Nation have been trying to get answers why. They've gotten some autopsy reports that show that Tyler was in an early stage of CTE, the brain injury that afflicts so many football players. And, Mark, I know the questions that a lot of people have, and I've seen it in some of the comments today. They've said, how many hits does it take? Because, he was mostly a backup quarterback at Wazoo, and I don't know, what kind of shots he took in high school. But have you gotten any answers as to how limited a number of impacts can make that kind of lasting imprint on an athlete's brain?
No, we haven't. What the one part that I think is changing the storyline around CTE that we've read is concussions seem to be less of the issue. So not that they're good, and not that you should play with a concussion, and not that multiple concussions aren't something to take care of. But whether whether it's ruled a concussion or not doesn't seem to be the leading indicator of CTE. It seems to be repetitive trauma and multiple hits. How many it hasn't been determined or even guessed at from the literature we've read yet.
From talking with both of you, it sounds like you certainly see this as a causal possibility to the suicide. I don't hear a lot of bitterness toward football. I'm not hearing that in your voices. Is there?
Oh, you know what? That's a great question and a good catch. it's a complex question. There's no bitterness towards football, the sport. There's a lot of disappointment, of course, in our lives. We're missing, the brightest star on the planet as we're concerned, as we are concerned. But we're not blaming football. We have 3 kids that played football. I think the math sort of makes everybody sit up and wonder. There's millions of kids that have played football for 90 years that have gone through all this, and this wasn't an outcome for them. And so there's no bitterness there. That's one part of it. And we have a 17-year-old who's an awfully good quarterback and another amazing, child, and he's continuing to play. And I think what it is, Dori, for us is it's a risk, like a lot of sports. It's a risk that we have to, as a family and as individual players and individual families, sort of assess. And the point that we're at now, looking back on Tyler, it's very, while it's very difficult, we understand that we're looking through the lens of 2 parents that lost their child, 2 brothers that lost their middle brother. And so everything's a little distorted. We don't know. I mean, the hit in the Arizona game, certainly the hits he took when he was playing Pop Warner, et cetera. We're going to continue to study and learn from it. But I think that's right. The bitterness is suppressed because of the sadness. I mean, at the end of the day, this is confusing to us and it's upsetting and all those things, but it's really overridden by just, missing this wonderful child.
Well, and you've kind of answered my next question by telling me that your 17-year-old is still playing, and when your boys give you grandkids, would you feel okay about them playing football too?
Well, I hope that's a ways away. And that only matters, in this sense, it only matters that I think there's a lot of resources being poured into the study of CTE at the moment. And I think that's probably today I would say that it feels like what we're learning is maybe starting them a little later than starting them at 5 and 6 years old might be a positive thing. I would wait to get all the available information at that time before making that decision. Of course, now I would move heaven and earth and trade anything to have Tyler back, including never introducing them to football or discouraging them or whatever. But that's a unique situation in our case. But I think having all the right having the most up-to-date information is what would drive that decision. Yeah,
and that's such a well-said response, because we cannot live our lives in hindsight, and that would just add to the futility of the situation to ask what if we had done something different, because you made all the great decisions that great parents of kids make, about sports and other things in raising your boys, and so I'm glad you don't live the what ifs. Kym, man, your family is so strong, and Mark mentioned the outpouring of love that you guys have received, and when you and your son were in our area a couple of months ago, I think what you guys are getting back is just what everybody is hearing, and that is a family in the midst of unimaginable grief that is displaying even more unimaginable strength, and I'm really impressed with both of you. Wow.
Well, thank you. I tell everybody I have no idea how this moved so quickly in 5 months. And then I think, yes, I do. It's Tyler. And we're contacted by people all over the country, and they send me these amazing letters and emails. And this last one, I loved it, from a gentleman in Hawaii. And he said, Tyler always connected people in his life, and he's doing the same thing in his death. And I think there's some power, some light that Tyler had that is going to keep living on. And everybody that has been touched by either his thought, his memory, they've played a part in his life, they're gonna follow this path with us. And we have a journey together that I think there are very many people that are committed to being on with us, and we're so grateful for that. And it actually gives us strength.
Well,
it gives us strength.
Let's stay in touch, because as you travel this journey, both of you, if you learn things that you think would be instructive for either families of athletes or families who are dealing with the grief that you both are, I would always love to talk with you and give you that opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
We appreciate that very much, and we said early on in our kind of message back to the community that we promised then, and we'll continue to honor that as we find out and learn more about this and what happened to Tyler, we'll share it as openly as we can and see if that doesn't help all of us deal with it a little better.
Okay. All right. Well, we will indeed stay in touch. Kym and Mark Hilinski, God bless both of you and all three of your boys, and I appreciate you coming on with me this afternoon.
Thank you, Dori.
Great.
Hey,
Thanks so
and
much,
Dori,
Dori.
Yes.
Thank you for saying three of your boys. That means a lot.
I meant that very sincerely. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Okay. Bye.
Kym and Mark Hilinski joining us here on KIRO Radio.